In a world filled with information, where do you turn to get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Lock it in to the longest running financial talk show in Arkansas. And let us help you build the bridge between information and application. Real financial change begins right here, and it starts with you.
It's showtime! Woo!
It can be pretty easy to catch fire to find financial independence and then suffer burnout. On today's show, playing the mental game that can help you win the long game.
This is the Get Ready for the Future show.
And welcome in to another edition of the Get Ready for the Future show. Glad to have you along if you're watching online or if you're listening on radio. My name is Scott Inman. And to my right, Teresa Arrigo. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're back for 2 straight, right?
Yeah.
You were here last week, right?
I was.
Yes. Becoming a regular. We just kicked John out and put you in.
Hey, I'll take it when I can.
Yeah. And Janet, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah. How are we doing today? Everybody ready to go?
We're doing good.
We discussed a little bit in the warm up before the pregame, right?
Yeah.
Before the show starts, and we had some really interesting conversations. Maybe sometime we'll share that with you, but we're not going to talk about all that today.
Yeah.
But some of what we talked about was kind of spurred by what we are talking about. We mentioned in the open there about catching fire to find financial independence, and we talk about that a lot on this show as far as the motivational aspects of that to get started and dream big, and those things are very important. But I think oftentimes once you've done that, you can get a plan together, you can get on track, you can start your journey, and then it can get hard. And that's really the jumping off point here is you can suffer burnout because this is not easy. There is no easy button to financial independence. It's the long haul. And so I think today's show really is going to be centered around, it's more of the mind game of getting your mind right to stay on track so that you can achieve your goals.
And I think it's also about understanding your goals and what you need to focus on. Because, sometimes your goal is small and it's easy to create a plan. And then other times your goal is a long-term goal. So you need to have some steps along the way. And that's some of the stuff we're going to cover.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about, we're rolling into Independence Day weekend, so we're talking about financial independence as our parallel here. Yeah, can you believe it's here
Wasn't
already?
even thinking about that.
Yeah. So Independence Day weekend, and if you think about when our forefathers were fighting for our independence, they had to remember their why. It was a longer battle than people who are not really students of history realize. It was an ongoing struggle for a very long time, and they had to continually remember their why. My daughter and I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to go to Boston, and they have this mock-up of the Boston Tea Party. So we got to throw stuff over in the harbor and everything, And anyway, you hear all of these stories about why they were there and how they felt and what they were thinking. And it's more than just, the dates in a history book. It's the why. And that's what fueled them. That's what kept them going to say, I will die, give me liberty or give me death. This is worth it to me. And I think you've got to think about any type of independence. If you're talking about going from being a teenager to being on your own, there's some struggle in that, and you've got to grow. Same thing is true of financial independence. There is struggle, but I will tell you that like our independence as a nation, it is worth fighting for. What is on the other side, the freedoms that are involved in that are worth it.
And I think all change is hard. Whether it's financial, it's making different food choices, whatever battle you're fighting, there's going to be difficulty to change. We're just natural fighters of change.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned it, the why has to be big enough. Your why has to be clearly defined. And for me, it has to be right in front of me. I'm the type that I'll put pictures on the wall of things that I'm shooting for, goals that I have.
Right.
And we talked during one of our leadership trainings a while back about our I am statements. So one of the things, we're talking about mind shift. You've got to decide that this is just who you're going to be so that your why can be clearly defined before you ever get started.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about your why and remembering your why and some steps on how to continue to do that, because that's our first bullet point today. We've got 5 of them on basically working on the mind game of this so that you can win in the long game. But I think, again, continuing to set the table here, we've been guilty of this. We use the word retirement too much. I think that's really a great point to start with here is that this is financial independence. I think when you're talking about getting your mind right, there's a real difference in the connotations of those words. I mean, retirement can be whatever you want it to be, but when you just think about the word, I think a lot of people think about the end, right? The work life is over, and these are the final days and years of my life, and I'm done. But financial independence, on the other hand, really connotates more of doing what you want to do and when you want to do it, and having the means from a retirement income plan's perspective and the assets to be able to do that. And so I think that's a mind shift as well.
Yeah. I would agree. I remember an appointment several years ago very clearly. This couple had been friends of mine for a while, and they came in to have an appointment. And she was a stay-at-home mom, and he was working, and so it wasn't really a question of when she was going to retire. So I looked at him and I said, "So what's your timeline to retirement?" And he grinned real big and just kind of sat there for a moment. And the wife looked at him and looked at me, and she said, "I'm not so sure that he believes in retirement." and not that it doesn't exist, but that it's not something that's in his plan for the future. Now, what he did, however, believe in was financial independence. He believed in the ability that, if he is forced to have to retire, to come away from the workforce, then if he's financially independent, he can do that. But there was not an intent on his part to, on this day, stop working anymore.
And I think that brings up an important point that a lot of people probably don't realize, and that is that the studies have told us that many people, the vast majority, retire not when they planned to.
Earlier than they planned. Yes.
Because of something they can't control.
Right.
So that's an important method. I think you've brought a good point of our goal needs to change. It's not just about getting to a destination. It's about being ready for that destination at some point, but also being ready now so that your family's in a good place.
So the idea or concept of financial independence really has to become more important than the day-to-day financial decisions. So when you think about what you're going to do with your money, where the money's going to go, you're obviously going to have to be on track with a plan to save and invest, but then you're also going to have to make decisions to deny yourself some of the things that you may think you want. And we're going to talk about balance later in the broadcast too, because I think that's important. We're not talking about eating pork and beans for the rest of your life, but unless you're an exceptionally high income earner, there's going to be some sacrifices that are going to have to be made here to achieve financial independence. So let's go back now to the remember your why that you guys have already alluded to. I love this concept of asking yourself this 5 times, right? So what are we talking about here? Ask yourself why. Let's say you say, why do I want to be financial independent? Why am I pursuing financial independence? Maybe it's because you just want to save money. If you answer yourself that way, then ask why. Why do you want to save money? So it's kind of this deeper dive into really understanding what it is you want.
Which is what we do in the meeting room. When someone answers a question, we're always going to say, okay, why is that important? Why is that important? Because often there's something in the back of their mind that they're maybe not even aware of that is truly their driving force. For me, honestly, it's about teaching my children better than I knew. I want to be intentional to educate them when I'm making financial decisions so that when they're older, they're equipped. Because I love my family that did a great job teaching me a lot of things, but finances was not part of our conversations. And so I am personally, my deep why in making wise choices financially is my children.
I think many times your why comes with a story of scars.
Probably.
And not all the time, but a lot of times it does. And like for me, and many people have already heard this story, but my husband went from, we went from a 2-income household to a 1-income household basically overnight for health reasons for him. And that was a challenge. But then we also had over 6 figures of medical debt before it was all said and done, above and beyond what the insurance companies were going to pay. And that'll blow up an emergency fund pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And once you have been through that, I mean, we almost lost our house. It's just, it's a nightmare of a story to hear the details, but here we are on the other side of it, and we won't go through that again ever. And to have experienced something like that is a great motivator, kind of on the negative side, but a great motivator nonetheless. But also on the positive side, having seen my parents make, sacrifice after sacrifice over the years and then get to where they did in retirement, and to be able to do the things that they've done and enjoy the things that they've done, and then like you said, Teresa, to be able to help the next generation, to be able to teach them the things that they need to know in order to be financially independent themselves at a much earlier age. My daughter's already got an IRA. She started it when she was 14, and I didn't have investments until I was well into my 20s. And so she's starting, over a decade earlier than I did, because that is part of the focus of financial independence for our family.
Yeah, I think about that. When you start early, the mind game is not going to be as hard because you're used to it, right?
Yeah.
You've been doing it for 10 years. By the time you're in your 30s, pretty wild stuff there. I want to go back to what you said about the client meeting room, and that's part of what we do to help you deep dive through the whys. I think that's a great point, because we still get people, I think, in our client meeting room that have assumptions or expectations of how things are going to go. And I would say that those are almost exclusively about, they're going to pitch me some investment, right?
Yes.
We're going to talk about investments, and they're going to pitch
got the
me
next hot thing. And I think that's part of the process too. In that first appointment for us is to get you to thinking the way you should be thinking, like we're talking about today. Yes, and retirement is a destination, but that financial independence at an earlier age means I get to take my kids on trips, which my family couldn't do as much because we didn't have the freedom to do it when I was growing up. But I've gotten to take my kids to go do things and have experiences because of the choices we make day to day.
Right.
And I think that's equally as important as planning for retirement.
So we talked about remembering your why. I think that's the first thing as we talk about getting on fire to find financial independence. And then once you've made that commitment, how do you keep the commitment? Going through those decisions and the spending decisions. We talked a little bit about that too. As far as the savings goes, you've got to keep on track towards your savings and investments, and not get sidetracked by buying some things that you don't need, or you might not even want after you think you want it, and then you make the purchase and have buyer's remorse. We've got 4 more of these, and we don't really have a lot of time to get into the second one, but we can kind of broad stroke them, and we've got a couple of minutes left until we've got to take a break. But you think about, don't try to do too much at once. That's our next bullet point. And I'm going to set this up just talking a little bit about multitasking, because I was so thankful to see Abby Shrewsbury, who does all our research and puts our content plan together, to put this bullet point in front of me. Multitasking is a myth.
Yeah.
Wow. Think about that. All you multitaskers out there, of which I am not one, nor have I ever claimed to be one. I'm so satisfied by that, to read that.
You just feel vindicated that it's not a thing. So you're not failing. It just doesn't exist.
That's right. The point, and the reason is, it says the human brain cannot perform 2 tasks that require high-level brain function at once. So when you think you're multitasking, you're actually bouncing from one task to another.
Exactly. You're just rebounding between multiple tasks, which means you're not giving any of them your true focus. And I am definitely someone who tries to do this unintentionally. I am ADD. So I'm constantly bouncing around between ideas. But really what ends up happening when you have too many irons in the fire is that you're not really giving any of them your full attention. So when we're talking about your goals, it's important to prioritize those goals and focus on one thing at a time.
Well, that's very much like, if you think about the debt snowball that we've recommended, it's not something where you throw $5 extra at this one and $10 extra at that one and whatever your total might be, and it's just spread out all over the place. You go, okay, which one am I going to focus on until it's done, and put all of the excess on that one thing. And if you're thinking about your goals, Teresa, you talked about having, a board where you've got pictures of things like that. We've done that type of thing, but if you go in my office, you'll see a hodgepodge of Legos that have been built into a little bitty house. I built that with some leftover Legos when I was in 7th grade, and I put it in the window in the bedroom, and it was there to remind me that I wanted to be a homeowner early. Well, I bought a house less than a year out of college, so did that, but it was something I just focused on. Now it's in the office to remind me that I want to pay the house off way earlier than the mortgage company is expecting. We're not there yet. We got kids about to go to college, but it is something I focus on daily.
So it avoids your distraction to other things.
Yeah, it does.
You see it right there.
It does.
Because we all are squirrels. I mean, quite frankly, right? We get distracted by the shiny things in life. And so having that in front of you keeps you from being distracted and keeps your why on track as well.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit more about multitasking and how that applies to your finances next.
A game warden noticed how a particular fellow named Sam consistently caught more fish than anyone else. The successful fisherman invited the game warden to come along with him and observe. So the next morning, the two fellows met at the dock and took off in Sam's boat. When they got to the middle of the lake, Sam stopped the boat and the warden sat back to see how it was done. Sam's approach was really simple. He took out a stick of dynamite, lit it, and threw it in the air. The explosion rocked the lake with such a force that dead fish immediately began to surface. Sam took out a net and started scooping them up. Well, you can imagine the reaction of the game warden. When he recovered from the shock of it all, he began yelling at Sam. He said, "Hey, buddy, you can't do this. I'll put you in jail. You'll be paying every fine there is in the book." The game warden was just incredulous. Sam, meantime, just simply set down his net, took out another stick of dynamite. He lit it, tossed it, this time in the lap of the game warden, with these words: "Are you going to sit there all day complaining, or are you going to fish?" For some of us, the same question could be asked about our retirement. This is John Shrewsbury with Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. Whether it's trying to find the best investment or just worrying about the stock market, a lot of folks seem frozen with retirement indecision, and that very well could lead to an explosion of your own, an explosion of your dreams for a comfortable future. Plan now for your time on the lake or wherever your dreams take you.
A smarter, simpler, more personal approach to retirement continues with the Get Ready for the Future show.
Talking about the mental game, how to, after you've committed to a goal of financial independence or saving for your kids' college or paying off your house, whatever the financial goal is, and you've decided, yes, I want to do that, how to keep the mental game in check so that you can still achieve that, because it is easy to get sidetracked, as we talked about in the last segment. Remembering your why, asking yourself the 5 whys. Why do you want to do this? And when you answer yourself, well, why do you want to do that? And get to the deeper meanings, keeps you in a good mental health towards your goals. And then we just started talking a little bit about multitasking and how that's a myth, and we're going to dive a little deeper into that as well. But I do want to mention, this fits so well with our theme today, too. We've got a great offer for you that is absolutely free, and it's easy to get. We've talked about this on the show before, but feeling secure about your future starts with how you see your future. And we have 10 ways to shift your perspective on financial planning. We know that financial planning can really be something that is off-putting to somebody, right? I don't know how to do that. I don't want to do that. That's going to take time. It's going to be hard. 10 ways to shift that perspective, if that's you. It's called What's the Plan? A manifesto for your life, your worth, and what happens next. Here's how to get it. Just visit getreadyforthefuture.com/plan. That's getreadyforthefuture.com/plan. Or even a simpler way, if you got your cell phone handy, just text the word plan to, where's my number, because it's not on my sheet.
501-381-5228.
There it is.
All you need to do is text the word plan to 501-381-5228.
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome, Scott.
I'm pretty sure that's the second time that's happened.
That's okay.
Sometimes,
I got
Were
your
you
back,
trying to
man. I got you.
multitask? Is that what you were doing?
Maybe that's what I was trying to do. Great segue.
Doesn't work.
We talked in the last segment that multitasking is a myth, and I love seeing that because I've never considered myself a multitasker, but the research says the human brain cannot perform 2 tasks that require high-level brain function at once. So if you think you're multitasking, you're actually bouncing. Mm-hmm. And as you relate that, bouncing from one task to another, to how that applies to your your path towards financial independence or whatever your financial goal is, bouncing can really be lethal.
Well, when you think about different people's journeys, with fitness is something I always lean back to because I think a lot of us can relate to this. I tried this thing and it doesn't work after 2 days, so I switch to this thing and it doesn't work, so after 2 days I switch to the next one. Whereas if I have a unified purpose and one goal in mind and I have a path laid out for me, I'm more likely to go there, especially if I have accountability. And that's where I feel like the planning process, no matter what stage or what section of financial independence you're working on, is helpful because that advisor is going to help you identify what goal needs to be your priority and give you steps to take one at a time. You talked a minute ago about debt elimination, and we call this the shotgun approach, where you're paying a little extra towards everything because you want to make progress on all of them. But what you actually do is you dampen your progress on your overall financial independence. But you wouldn't know that if you hadn't had somebody teach you, and where else would you learn it?
Right.
It's not something you're going to be taught elsewhere. So having somebody in your life to help you prioritize those goals and give you step-by-step instructions that then you can come back to and say, okay, I'm done with step A, now what?
Well, I think it's important to realize, when we talk about multitasking, there are a lot of different directions that your money needs to go, all from the same paycheck. I want to be sure that we're clear. We understand that your money has to have multiple purposes at this point. But if you think about, let's look at the excess, and I know some of you are going, there ain't no kind of excess in my paycheck. I bet there is if you really sit down and plan for it and become intentional about it. So with that, now what's your focus? And is it, getting a kid into college? Is it helping yourself be more prepared for retirement? Is it paying down debt? What is the focal point of that excess that you don't have to have just to, get by for the next pay period?
Let me share a client story, too, here, which I think fits into this multitasking thought or this bouncing from goal to goal or what our minds can potentially think about. I have a client who he left the job about 1.5 years ago, rolled over his 401k to us, and we are managing that. So the majority of his wealth is here. He started a new job. He's been doing that for about 1.5 years, and I asked him the other day how much he's contributing to his new 401k, his new employer, and he said he wasn't contributing very much because he didn't think he'd be there very long. Okay, and I get that, right? He's
free money.
He's not very happy, where he is, and he's thinking he might bounce again. So his mind is focused on, well, I'm going to change jobs soon, so I probably won't be vested in the employer match. Maybe not, but it's not costing you. My response to him was, it's not costing you anything to put your own money in there, which you will be completely vested in. And if you aren't invested in the employer match, it didn't cost you anything to get it there.
Right.
You didn't lose the ground on your own part of it, at least.
Exactly. So again, it was a mind shift that he was not thinking about retirement or financial independence, which is what we're there to do for him and to help him. But he was thinking about the next 1.5 years, the next 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's often the case, no matter how you lay that out. People are focused on the next 6 months or the next 9 months rather than the next 20 years.
Yes, and there was a quote I read once, and it said that basically discipline is just choosing what you want most rather than what you want now. And I think that that is why the why is so important, and why having a focus that is attainable, that feels tangible, is really important, because otherwise you just give up.
I think it's also important sometimes to take a moment and look at what you have accomplished so far, and not just what's in front of you. This is one of the benefits that I enjoy from putting all of our stuff on Excel. We've got the normal just cash flow that happens every month for food and clothing and transportation and all of that, but then the above and beyond things. And it's really nice every once in a while to look back and go, okay, we paid for that trip to wherever, to Hawaii that we took. We paid for that out of just consistent savings. That's done. That was this amount of money. That was significant, that we had the discipline to do that. And so if you take a moment to look back and celebrate, whether you actually do anything for the celebration, but at least cognitively celebrate what you have accomplished. I think that's also very motivating to go, okay, we can take the next steps as well.
Helps it be tangible, so you can say, okay, I've done this, I can do this again.
Absolutely.
That's moving us into our third point. Reward yourself along the way. Celebrate those good times. I do think the reverse is true too on that. When you think about looking back and seeing your progress, I do want to make the point that if you're very early in your journey, progress can seem slow.
Yeah.
I think that's something that can really derail people from a mental perspective too, is, hey, I've got my emergency fund just where I want it. And then you have an emergency, right? You have to take some of that out, and it can be discouraging. Or I started saving in the stock market, and the market goes down 20%, and now I have less than what I've actually put in, right? And so it can be discouraging as well. You have to remember, it's all coming back for me to this idea that it's the long game. You have to consider the long game and have some trust in that along the way. So progress can seem slow when you're starting out, but when you've been doing it a while, absolutely, you can look back and see those milestones that you've hit when you don't feel like you're making progress, and then create an opportunity to celebrate those good times.
So one of the ways you can celebrate, just to toss out some ideas here, if you've been paying down debt, and let's say that there's something you've been paying $100 on per month, and you got it paid off in June, in July, take that $100 and do whatever you want to do with it. It does not matter. Go out to eat, buy some clothes. It doesn't matter. Take your pick. You've worked hard to get to that point. And then in August, take that $100 and add it on to the next priority, whatever that may be. Yeah, but it's good to acknowledge that and celebrate a little bit.
And I think it definitely needs to be something that doesn't derail your goals.
But
absolutely taking a breath and celebrating for a moment and then hitting the ground running again is super helpful, I think.
I think about when I try to have some consistency in my diet, right? And I'm not necessarily...
Let's not talk about this right now, Scott.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot right here, aren't I? And I'm not trying to lose weight, but I'm certainly trying not to gain any, right? So
I'm at that stage. I get it.
So you're working through staying on track, just like you would be towards some financial goals. Well, I let myself break on the weekends. I mean, my idea is I cut out just sweets and sugary drinks, so no dessert, sugary drinks during the week. Try to eat a bunch of salads during the week, but I can't keep that up for 7 days a week, right? Or I can. Maybe some people can. And I like salads, but I like everything else too. So I give myself a break on Saturday and Sunday. So that's the way that I operate to keep my mind engaged on there's always something down the road that I'm going to get a break on, and I'm going to enjoy that break. So I think that feeds in on the financial side as well.
But you got to know yourself, because I could not do that, because what I would do is eat all of the things for 2 days straight.
You catch up?
Shoveling it in with both hands.
Yes, I just have to take a balanced approach all around. I'm the type that I couldn't even probably take the month off, honestly, on that, because if I lose the momentum, going back to me being ADD and knowing myself, if I lose that momentum, then I'm going to struggle to get back on track personally. So that's one of those things. If you find that, for instance, I don't think credit cards are the devil. I think that they have a place if you can manage them. But if you know you can't, if you've proven to yourself you can't, get rid of them. Stop using them. Just don't, know yourself.
It's definitely a to thine own self be true deal.
Yes.
You do have to know who you are. And frankly, if you're starting out, and adulting for the first time in life, you may not know who you are yet. So just be aware and pay attention. And
get some education. The younger you start educating yourself, the better. And we've got some great tools for that, and we'd love to help you with that. But I will tell you that getting an education is critical. When I joined this team, I was a bookkeeper and had been for 20 years, but there were so many things about finance I didn't even know, and it killed me at first. But I was so thankful to be part of this team because you guys just poured into me, and you taught me these things so I could get moving at that point. And I was 35, so no matter what age you are, you're not too young to start today.
You can celebrate these milestones, though, without using the $100.
Yes.
There've been I know people who've done the paper chains that we used to do in grade school. You loop pieces of paper together, and when you pay off a certain amount, you cut that loop, and then when it's all done, so you're at the end of that journey, then you celebrate, but not before. Just again, figure out what works for you, but acknowledge it in some way. It doesn't have to be a monetary acknowledgement, but somehow acknowledge that progress.
That's why Dave Ramsey does the debt-free screen. game, right?
Yes.
That's a really
It
emotional
is.
way to celebrate a big achievement. I think, too, when you talked about education, I want to circle back to that. And so much of what we talk about is always going to come back to sitting down with a financial advisor. We provide that education, too. But I also think sometimes when we're in the client meeting room, the client may even know what we are saying to them, but they have not heard it said in the way that we say it.
Yeah.
I think it's a different perspective of going, have you ever thought of this? No, I never really thought about it like that. And I think that can be valuable too. A lot of mind development or mind shift, that's the word I'm trying to think of, mind shift that can happen in that first appointment with a Gen Wealth financial advisor as well. We've got one more to talk about, avoiding emotional moves. That's next.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is that we're life changers. We believe one of the best ways to change your life is to educate yourself. George Washington Carver said that education is the key that unlocks the golden door of freedom. Let that soak in for just a moment. Think about the changes that you can make by learning more, specifically learning more about your money. We are passionate about education. We believe that it has the potential to change not only one life, but generations to come.
There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at Gen Wealth and harness the power of more.
You ain't heard nothing yet. Buckle up, because we're back with the Get Ready for the Future show.
Halfway home on today's program, and we're talking about after you've got the fire for financial independence, you've made the commitment to do it, or whatever your financial goal may be, how do you stay on track? And it's about that mind game, the mental shift that needs to happen along the way. We've given a couple of those tips today. We're going to talk about emotional moves, because that is certainly something that can derail your journey towards financial independence or other financial goals. But I do want to take a minute to, again, let you know about the free offer, the free download that we have available. Feeling secure about your future starts with how you see your future. We have a great opportunity to get 10 ways to shift your perspective on financial planning. It's called What's the Plan? A Manifesto for Your Life, Your Worth, and What Happens Next. And here's how to get it. Go to getreadyforthefuture.com/plan, or just text the word plan. That's the easy way to do it, to 501-381-5228. You can do that right now if you've got your cell phone and you're watching or listening to our broadcast today. 501-381-5228. Text the word plan to get a free download on 10 ways to shift your perspective on financial planning, called What's the Plan. And we've talked a lot so far in the program, too, about sitting down with a Gen Wealth financial advisor. Want to reiterate that is easy to do, and it is complimentary. That first appointment costs you nothing to do. It is a conversation. I think that we have talked enough about that today to let you know that it's not about investments. It's not going to be a sales pitch. It is about you and getting to know your why and what you're trying to accomplish, and see if we can be a fit for you in helping you achieve those financial goals. If you want to sit down with an advisor, you can call 501-653-7355. We also have an 800 number. It's 866-653-PLAN. So you can call anywhere you're watching today, 866-653-7526. And there's an advisor near you. We have offices all over the state of Arkansas, in West Little Rock, Conway, Bryant, El Dorado, Hot Springs. We're in Northwest Louisiana, and we're in Central Tennessee now, Brentwood, Tennessee, specifically in the Nashville area. So there's an advisor near you to help out. Again, I can't reiterate enough. It costs you nothing to come in and have that first conversation. So why not do it? We'll ask you to maybe gather some documents, right?
Yeah.
It's not overwhelming. If the list is big, you don't have to get all of them together, but the more you can get together, the better for the
sometimes
planning process.
there's things on those documents that we'll notice that you may not have thought to ask.
Yep.
So that's why we ask for those. It's purely so that we can make the best out of your time as possible.
Yep.
Because if we can't get all the information, then it's going to be really hard for us to diagnose whether you even need to engage with our team further or not. So that's why we ask for that. I think that's important for people to understand.
And our goal is not to sell you an investment, is for you to achieve your goals, whatever those goals may be. So we're going to talk about the other point here on trying to make sure that your mental game is in check once you've committed to a goal of either financial independence or paying off debt, whatever your goals are. You've got to avoid emotional moves. And this one is certainly potentially deadly in the investment side of things, and it goes both ways, I think. You can get really giddy about chasing opportunities and hearing about the latest stock tip, whether it's Bitcoin or GameStop or whatever is out there, and that's all, of course, been there this year, and you can say, hey, I've got to get in on that opportunity and potentially take way more risk than you need to achieve your goals. And it can go the other way as well at the beginning of the pandemic, and things start going south and the market's down 30%. You can start to really have the tendency to want to pull out your money from the market and take risk off the table, which is, of course, a bad thing to do too. And that happens. That has happened. We've sat with clients before they came to us that they did do that because they were nearing retirement, right? They were nearing the time where they didn't think they had time to make it back up. And one of the conversations I had recently with someone who was thinking like that was, don't think of retirement as the end. We've already said that here today. It is the beginning of something else.
Yes.
So a portion of your assets can still be invested for the long term in the market because you're not going to be using them for several years. So I think that's a good mind shift point there, is retirement's not the end.
I think a lot of people get stuck on the total number of assets they have and not the day-to-day income needs that they have. And that's one of those big differences between us and others, from what I understand, is that we see that retirement problem not as an asset issue, but an income issue. And I think in general, probably most of my poor decisions in my life could be linked to an emotional decision, if I were being honest with you out there.
That's true for probably most people. And Scott, you talked about, people going to cash when things got scary, and many of them still being there. I met with somebody recently who now 13 years later is still in cash from 2008.
Wow.
And you think about all of the all-time highs that they've missed, and that's one of the phrases that makes people nervous. When they hear all-time high, they're thinking, well, if we're at an all-time high, then we got to be going down. And I'll tell you a funny little story about my grandfather, and this may help you remember this and maybe think differently of it going forward. But anytime you would play a game with my grandfather, Battleship, Rook, you name it, whatever the game was, sometime during the game, he'd look at you and say, now, honey, you know what's going to happen. The winner of this game, at the end of it, the winner is going to be the all-time champion. But here's the deal. You'd be the all-time champion, and then there'd be another game, and then there'd be a new all-time champion. Okay? I want you to think of the all-time high like that. Okay? Even if we have a downturn, that's okay. There will be another all-time high in the future. And if everything that you're depending on for retirement is in there and it all goes down, Houston, we have a problem. But that's not how it's supposed to be done. That's not how we do it. If you segment those assets so that you have the ones that you're going to need in the first 10 to 15 years of retirement, and you don't need the longer term money until, a decade and a half, then 2008 doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter that we haven't maybe had a new all-time high in recent history. It'll be okay. There will be another one in the future.
And I think what drives that going to cash is the fear of losing their principal. But what people don't realize is every day that inflation happens, you're losing your buying power. So you're trading one, risk for another. There's always a trade-off.
You're right.
I think when people are a little fearful of the all-time high, they're again kind of like my client who was focusing on the next year and a half of his work life rather than the next 20 years. They're looking at today, the snapshot of we just hit an all-time high. We are at a high. But if you have the perspective, I always think about the market since 1950, right? Where was it? I think people could easily get their mind around, we're a lot higher over the last 50 or 60 or 70 years, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had to hit a few all-time highs along the way.
And some low points.
And then we had to hit another all-time high. So, there were actually 26 all-time highs in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, right?
I don't
That's
understand why
crazy.
they're allowed to call it an all-time. Why not just say new high?
Yeah,
Why do we
that's
have
better.
to make it feel like it's finite?
Well,
Oh, it's-
but
I guess
people are
people won't
choosing
pay
that
attention.
emotion.
Yeah.
You know, they're not making you feel that. People are choosing, oh my gosh, it's an all-time high. That's, scary. 'cause
Think if
what's
you
around the
applied that
corner?
to other things, like
Yeah.
I got a pay raise. That's my all-time pay. No, I hope not. But we apply it to this one sector of things, and it's just I hate that they use these types of words because to me it's fear-mongering in many ways.
The other way I think emotions can kind of grab a hold of you is your family past, right? Or if you don't have anybody who has become financially independent on their own terms, right? And just kind of worked until they died or worked until they couldn't because of their health work anymore. It can be really easy to not have that template laid out there for you and to have a defeatist attitude over it. And you maybe try and think about how that affects you if you get the fire for financial independence, as we talked about earlier in the broadcast, as this is what we're talking about from the point of committing. Say, I'm going to do this, and then something not go the way you expect it to. That can really play with your mental game as well.
Yeah, I think if you can't see it as attainable, then the why is not going to work. You have to believe that you can attain the goal first, and it may be that you don't feel like you can. What harm is there in getting a second opinion from an advisor who deals with this day to day? I've heard a lot of people say, I'm just not good at money. I'm just not good with money. Okay, let's change that thought process a little bit. Have you spent the last 10 years learning how money acts? Have you gotten an education and a certification? Then chances are you've probably not been given the opportunity to be good at money. You can't control where you were, but you can control where you go. And just like me, I always use the car analogy because I am horrible at vehicle maintenance, but I feel no shame in hiring somebody to help me with my vehicle maintenance because that is not where I want to put my focus or where I'm gifted. But I do find that there's sometimes a bit of a block when it comes to finances for people where they'll just say, well, I'm just not good at it. So, I'm stuck. No, you're not. You can get help and have somebody work with you towards your goals instead of trying to do it alone and feeling, like you said, defeated by it.
I mean, it's kind of, there's a parallel. We were talking about dieting and exercise and all of that earlier. If you're not good at that, many people get a personal trainer.
Yes.
Well, the same is true for finance. That's what a financial advisor should be, is a personal trainer for you financially, just to coach you through. Here are the things that are coming up. Here's where you are. Here's how we get from where you are to where you want to be.
And then give you accountability because the reality is we all need that. I don't know very many people who do not do better with just a little accountability in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the other thing too is we shift into what's going to become our final segment. We've got a couple of minutes left in this one. It really comes back to the other advantage here to avoid the emotions, to remember your why. It's the written plan, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. But think about how beneficial it is to have things on paper on purpose. Janet, you talked about the Legos in your office, but the 3-ring binder can be the same thing, right? You've got that out. When you forget, when you become wary, when your emotions take over, when you want to quit, you open that thing back up and you go, oh yeah, this is why we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we're 50 years old now, and here's where we're going to be at 60, and we're going to retire at 65, and we're going to get this kind of income, and that keeps you on track. I think that would be very helpful as well.
And I think it helps people to know we don't use pie-in-the-sky numbers. We're not telling you we're going to get you 12% every year during this planning process, because what we want to do is reach our goals. So we're going to use realistic numbers that we feel like are reasonable to get, and often we beat.
Yes.
Well, and I think even looking for the pitfalls that maybe you haven't thought about. You know, so much of what we've talked about today has focused on the investment side and whether you'll have the assets and therefore the income for you to be able to make it through retirement comfortably. But what if something derails you, long-term care needs, that type of thing? You've got to be intentional about planning for the what-if scenarios, because they happen all too often. If they happen to you, will you still be on track? And that goes into part of the planning process as well.
And if you're a pre-retiree, do you have the insurance in place that if something happens to one of you, the other would be okay and still get to retire?
Yeah.
And when we talk about the what ifs, I'm pretty fond of saying in the client meeting room too, when we build that plan, that's the first run. That's the rough draft. This thing is going to likely change because life happens, and that's important to remember as well. So we're going to talk about that planning process a little bit more. That is our final bullet point on ways to keep your mental game engaged after you've made the commitment, after you've caught fire and want financial independence, how to stay on track. Our final break and the Get Ready for the Future show continues after this.
The beauty of a potter's work is that each item is unique. No piece is the same. That's what makes it art. At Gen Wealth, we believe your financial plan should be unique to you. Through our process, your money is carefully shaped around your goals and dreams. Your future, artfully crafted. Call us today or visit our website and connect with us. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors.
Meet the Gen Wealth team in person at our Gen Wealth Academy workshops happening in your area. For more information, visit getreadyforthefuture.com/events. Now, back to the show.
Feeling secure about your future starts with how you see your future. And we've got 10 ways to shift your perspective on financial planning. It is called What's the Plan? A manifesto for your life, your worth, and what happens next. And it is easy to get it. You can go to our website, getreadyforthefuture.com/plan, and get it there, or just text the word plan to get your free copy. The number is 501-381-5228. One more time for you, 501-381-5228. Text the word plan to that number and get the free download of What's the Plan? A manifesto for your life, your worth, and what happens next. We've been talking today about some tips to keep your mental game on track. Once you've made that commitment, you've talked about your dreams, you've set some dreams down of financial independence or whatever financial goal it is. Most of the time, that's what we're talking about. And then you lose that fire. You burn out. It's hard along the way. What do? Well, you remember your why. We talked about that. Don't try to do too much at once. Remember the multitasking? It's a myth. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life.
I'll be hearing that daily.
Reward yourself along the way. Celebrate the wins we talked about. And avoid emotional decisions, particularly when it comes to investing on either side of that, whether it's caused by fear, if fear is the emotion and that causes you to get out of the market, or if overexuberance or giddiness causes you to take too much risk. Those things can really be detrimental. Our final point is get a plan. And we've talked about that all the way through. We've weaved that in, but it is so important to have a written financial plan. We talk about this every show that so many people don't. I've seen different statistics. It varies, but it's usually under 20%. So it's always less than 1 in 5 of Americans. And many of those 4 or 5 who don't, I'm sure, think they have financial goals, right? They're probably not wandering in the wilderness. They think, hey, this is what I'm going to do. But they don't put it on paper on purpose and have a written plan.
You know, one of the things I've realized recently, because of having a new advisor in our meeting rooms with us, Troy's been working with me for many years, and he thinks the same way I do at this point because he's been around so many appointments with me. But Ginger, who used to be on our marketing team, has transitioned to be an advisor, and she'll come out of an appointment periodically with some insight that just kind of flies past us because we've seen some of these things so much. And one of the things that she has repeatedly observed is seeing so many people they've accumulated assets, but there's, significant 6 figures maybe sitting in the bank. And her comment has been, what if they had met with somebody 10 years ago? I think they're going to be okay, but how much more could that have grown? They just did that because they didn't know what else to do. They didn't have a coach. And so you may even feel like you're doing okay. You got a stack of cash sitting there and you're not in bad shape. And I get that. You're right. But where could you be? And if you're going to be a good steward of what has been provided to you, a way to honor that is to work with a professional and get a plan that is personalized for you.
Yeah, and that accumulation process it's pretty basic. Just keep adding money. Now, are there ways to accelerate it by engaging
Certainly.
with an advisor? Absolutely. But if you just keep putting money in, it's going to eventually grow, most likely. But then what? Most people know how to save better than they know how to decumulate, how to create an income plan. That's much more complex, and there are a ton of little factors that need to go into that decision. So having a plan that addresses those, I mean, how many times have you been in an appointment and you ask someone a question and then they look at you like, oh, I've never even thought of that. The effects of an estate plan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, how would that progression go past you? What happens if one of you passes away before the other? There are a lot of blind spots because you're just not in this every day that you may not be aware of or thinking of. The impact of distributions on your Medicare premiums that we can help you understand and educate you on so that you're prepared for it when you get to them.
And I think you guys would agree that in the financial services industry, for the most part, this is still non-existent. The retirement income plan is really a unicorn among many financial advisors. We sit down with clients all the time who have financial advisors, and they're talking to them about investments, and they may think they are talking to them about retirement income, but it is usually a diversified portfolio with some sort of arbitrary percentage pulled out on an annual basis, and that's it. We're talking about a dynamic retirement income plan that shows you monthly what you are going to receive and has inflation-adjusted raises built in, because that's a big risk. You've got to be able to have your income grow in retirement, and it is perpetual. It shows you the longevity risk is tackled by different reasons inside of that plan or different ways that those things are planned for.
You know, I've been in the industry 20 years now, and I have yet to see a financial plan from another competitor. Not one. And I'm not going to say that they're not out there.
Right.
I know that there are people who do them, but you know, we're also very engaged in the financial advisor community, if you will. And most of the people we talk to, they're not doing them, nor do they really see the need for it. And it amazes me that this far into our careers that we are still the unicorn, if you will. You know, nobody else is doing that, and we are very unique in that approach, and our clients hang on to that plan like it is
it's oxygen.
It is. Yeah, it's a big deal for them to understand this is unique to me, and let's go back and read this paragraph, and what did they say about this topic, and it's in there for you.
And then when life does happen, because it's going to, we cooperate with them to help them adjust the plan for that. I've done multiple adjustments to plans for clients that were already with Gen Wealth previously.
Right.
And to be completely frank, what you guys are talking about is exactly why I did the RICP certification process, because I became an advisor at Gen Wealth. Everything I know, I've learned from John and Janet. So I wanted to make sure, just because of who I am, that what I was believing in and what I, the Kool-Aid I drink was the right Kool-Aid. And so I took the time to do a certification course through the American College that focuses purely on retirement income strategies.
Yep.
And it was so validating to sit and hear people who have nothing to do with us, who are considered the leaders in our industry, talk about the things we do as the gold standard. And it meant so much to me to experience that so that I could be even more convicted in that.
You didn't learn anything from me, I noticed.
Oh,
That's a lot.
you were too busy being the Scott Inman.
Everything I learned was from John and Janet. Scott didn't help at all.
I did have 3 full years of sitting in appointments with John before I ever worked with clients. So I'm sorry.
I'm just using the
sorry.
opportunity.
I learned a lot from Scott and Tim and Troy. And
Don't start naming names.
Thank you.
It's too late now. So with the retirement income plan process, we're talking about the ready to retire process, quite frankly. If you're in a 5 to 10 year window pre-retirement and you're walking into that retirement red zone that we talk about, that is the plan. That's what the plan is going to look like for you. But we are built to offer services no matter where you are in your journey. So I do want to take a minute before we run out of time to talk about the other options if you're just getting started. And we've addressed folks in this show, I think, if you're just getting started, we've given you some tips as well. But there is the MoneyWorks option for you, which is brand new at Gen Wealth. It's been unveiled and rolled out just within the last month or so.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what that is.
So we've got the MoneyWorks program, which is kind of pairing the benefits of technology with having the accountability of an advisor. We've got a software kind of format that allows you to have a personalized plan of educating yourself and setting your goals with also having an advisor involved in that process. You know, there are a lot of tools out there that you can go to and you can learn about a specific topic, but there's not one out there that is tailored to you. But this one does that. And if you want to learn more, you can go to mymoney.works. Also, if you just kind of want to dip your toe in that education, we just started a podcast called the Talking Sense Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. It's the Talking Sense Podcast, and we're covering topics that are for that accumulator stage of life, those younger people who are just getting started and trying to educate themselves on things like how much house can I afford or how to manage debt, and those different topics that are unique to that younger generation. And I love it because this is a big part of my passion.
And then the other process we have, or program, I should say, that we have, we've got MoneyWorks for what we would call people starting out, trying to get back on track if maybe they have gotten derailed. There's also the Money Guide program. This program designed specifically for those who are in the middle of their financial journey, and they need a coach to guide them as they balance family and finance. You can visit getreadyforthefuture.com/money guide, or text the word money guide to that same number, 501-381-5228, to learn more about that. So 3 programs, 3 areas of service, no matter where you are in your financial journey. I blew right through that final bell, so we may have to hustle here. Janet, you've got final thoughts.
I would say remember your why and let your why motivate you to get a personalized financial plan on paper on purpose.
And check your head, check your mind, check your thoughts and emotions, and make sure that when you're making decisions that it's what you really want, not just what you want right now.
Yeah. Boy, that was too quick. Those were very fast
you
thoughts.
gave us a task.
You told us to be quick. We did it.
Let me piggyback on Janet's, what am I trying to say?
The final thought.
Your final thought.
Remember the why.
That'll work.
And yeah.
Words are not coming today. If you want to begin the process of putting that written plan together, you can call toll-free 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526 to begin the process. And again, we talked about multiple times during today's show, that first appointment is completely complimentary. And then don't forget, we've also mentioned this, feeling secure about your future starts with how you see your future. We have an opportunity to get 10 ways to shift your perspective on financial planning. It is called What's the Plan? A manifesto for your life, your worth, and what happens next. And that is easy to get to. Go to our website, getreadyforthefuture.com/plan, or text the word plan to download your free copy. The number to text to, again, is 501-381-5228. Again, 501-381-5228. Well, we hope we've given you some good insight on keeping the mental part of staying on track for your financial goals today. And we thank you for watching and listening to the Get Ready for the Future show. We'll see you again next time.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com, or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.